Hello and welcome to The Good, The Bad and The Worst, a podcast where we watch movie trilogies and decide which movie is so shallow that if you dived into it, you'd crack your skull open. I'm your host, Griner, and joining me today.
I'm Luke Morgan, and there's a lot of naysayers who come and say, nay.
My name's Conan, and we're all virgins on this bus.
Oh,
All
that
right.
was gonna
We are doing we're kicking off Spooktober with the Blair Witch Project, a trio of movies. Started in 1999 with the Blair Witch Project. Really kicked off the found footage genre as a whole, or at least the horror genre.
Subgenre, yeah.
Subgenre, yeah, sure. It's not a genre of its own, of course. Boys, do you have any fond memories of Blair Witch from when you were younger? It terrified the shit out of me.
I was going to say, you'd be the only one old enough to remember being like a teen to go see this film.
Excuse me, I was in year 5 when this movie came out.
Okay.
I was still quite a young person, but I was aware of it, and I was aware of the internet and like the marketing around it. And it actually genuinely terrified me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. I want to hear about that. Like, did you genuinely think this was real? What was your sort of understanding of it, I guess?
Yeah, I was too young to not like totally understand whether it was real or not. But I remember like seeing the marketing, like being aware of the marketing online. My primary school had pretty crappy dial-up internet, but I remember seeing bits and pieces of this supposed found footage that they had found, and I remember there even being like, it mustn't have been news articles, but like there were fake newsreels online about this footage that they found and stuff. I don't know. It was really effective on me as a 11-year-old or whatever I was, and I mean apparently a lot of adults got sucked into it too.
Yeah. So, I had never seen any of these films before. Obviously, though, they're very famous, and I remember, having older brothers growing up, hearing a lot about the Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project. Was it real? Was it fake? And it just caused this whole phenomena that it was kind of on my wall of shame of something I hadn't seen, this time, especially just the first one. And I can not wanting to jump straight into the discussion about the first one, but after watching it, 100% can see how in the early days of the internet or before internet, really with people on dial-up or whatever, how easy it would be to buy into this. I feel like if I was a teenager watching this in '99, it would have freaked the hell out of me, 100%. So, yeah, no.
Yeah, especially because it's at that time where it's doing something new as a movie. And so there's this half understood internet stuff where you're like, I think it's real footage and it's on the internet or something. And so it must be real, I guess. That sort of miscommunication that spreads with these things, someone hears about it and someone knows about it. And so then before you know it, your friend's friend has told you about this movie and then he tells someone else that it's a real snuff film. And then you're just like, yeah, everyone's telling me about this real crazy movie. I guess it's just viral marketing before viral was easier to do, right?
And before everyone had experienced viral marketing before, we all have experienced it now. We can kind of spot it when it's happening, or at least be pretty aware of it as soon as once the movie released. That's what that was for. Okay, I get it.
Yeah,
but
same thing's happening now with Terrifier 3. You can just tell straight away. Oh, that's marketing, and it's different these days.
Get the frig out.
Luke hates Terrifier.
People vomiting everywhere, apparently.
Yes, it's fact. It's recorded fact.
Yeah, and this was real too. But I even as a kid, just everyone was talking about it, and I feel like even my brothers, it inspired them to be like, oh, we should make a home footage thing. I remember them having stuff in costumes of this is actually a funny story. Having a thing where they were filming stuff they got in some version of a body bag and filming themselves doing this stuff out the back, and the police actually got called because someone thought them my brothers
crap
at the back, and the police actually showed up, but they were just filming something for their high school. But I feel like that would have been 100% inspired by this this found footage stuff. So yeah, no, interesting.
I even remember there was a bit of discourse around people like trying to spot things in the film because it's like it's pretty grainy and stuff. Like even at the end when the camera drops to the ground, like there was always this rumor that you can see the witch walk past if you just like it's only there for a frame, but if you watch, you see it happen and stuff like I remember this sort of stuff going around after I had like I watched this movie. It must have been a few years after it came out because I definitely didn't see it in '99. I would have been scarred for life, literally, if that had happened. I think, but I must have seen it early high school. I think.
There was this, and is it The Ring or The Grudge, the thing with the VHS tape?
The Ring.
The Ring also had, I think, a similar phenomenon where people believed, like, if you had this thing and did whatever with the VHS tape. I just remember that being the other big thing that people talked about as like worried, like saying Rosemary 3 times in front of a mirror or whatever. People were worried about doing. But I've never watched that.
Yeah, like the urban legendness of it. Like, because that's the Blair Witch in my mind is more like that, because I didn't see it until I was, I would have been 6 years old when this was released. I didn't see it for a long time. But I feel like as long as I've been alive, as long as I've known about movies, I've known that Blair Witch is a thing. It's like that like the mythology of it, right? It's this relic. It's like, that's the movie that everyone thought was real and that still might be real. And I feel like, in my mind, I remember sort of discussing this, I guess, and hearing from my parents or my siblings or something. Like, everyone thought it was real, but then the actors came out after the premiere and people still thought it was real. And so then in my mind, always being like, but was it real? Like, I guess the idea of like, there's something almost like some part of you wants to believe in it. And it's like, the idea of this movie being so powerful and influential that people believed it. And even to the point where you're told, yes, this is fake, but you're still like, but maybe it's not, or maybe there's a movie that's not fake just like this. Like, kind of the power of that idea and the mythology. It's so much so to the people are making up rumors about frames in the movie, like, you can see the witch for a split second. It's like, I don't think there'd be any evidence for that, but it's just people cling to this stuff and people love having this like shared phenomenon. And rewatching it this time, the thing that struck me the most is like, this will never happen again, right? Something to this status, to this cultural impact, like this moment that you can sort of all quietly share, just can't happen anymore because of the internet. Like, the only thing I could think of that would be close is things like Game of Thrones, right, where there was after the penultimate episode drops of the season, everyone's like, oh, it's so good. This is, that's the big episode where a big thing happens, but everyone's like chomping at the bit trying to talk about it, but there's sort of this. There's a respect so that they mostly don't spoil it for you.
Yeah.
But that was the last bastion I can think of like people being sort of this, there being this cultural thing that you need to share and that people want you to share so that they won't ruin it. Whereas now I just can't imagine anything getting this level of like excitement and influence and not just being ruined because of internet sleuths and because of drones taking shots of the camera set, like the film set and stuff like that, which kind of sucks.
I mean, as messed up as it is, like, we're in a world where people see real killings and shit on like live on video
on Reddit,
not just on Reddit, like people will be watching a TikTok and be like, oh my god, this person's doing something horrible, like, and it's like, I don't know, I feel like as a culture, people are desensitized to something like this, where this wouldn't feel like scare, kids these days or whatever. They're desensitized to everything. But it's also just, you couldn't do it now.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of like filming yourself for an extended period was still kind of novel in 1999 as well, right? Like even the gear that they take out there, they're worried about how expensive it is and they rented it and they had to get it back. Like, and that was true to the time. People didn't have phones on their cameras. Not every moment was captured on video like it is today. And like, people weren't taking selfies in 1999. It just wasn't really a thing. Whereas now we all, like, lots of people have cameras in their face constantly, and it does take some of that.
It's so interesting watching, like, we won't get too deep into it, but watching the first one and seeing that idea, right? Yeah, they've got cameras, and like as soon as they present a camera, people like the actors and the extras, they sort of become aware and you start performing. And like you see that in a lot of those early mockumentaries and documentaries earlier on, where like as soon as there's a camera between that person, there's kind of this innate need to perform because I'm being filmed. So like they start talking a bit clearer and they talk to the camera like they're on stage, whether or not they realize it or not. Whereas now we don't do that because everything is filmed. So people someone's filming and you just kind of like it just blends into the background. You don't really read. Yeah, it's like exactly. It's just normal, and that's really interesting. That idea of once upon a time, this like the performativity, if that's a word, of being on camera and what that does to people and how they act around that is really interesting.
Yeah. Had you guys seen any of the sequels before this watch through?
I'd say in the Wingard one, Blair Witch, but I hadn't seen Book of Shadows.
2016 movie, yeah, right?
Yeah, 2016 one.
Yeah, I never had any like I knew number 2 was just bad. Like everybody knew that it was just bad. I think.
I'd never heard that there was a Blair Witch 2. So
I remember the cover really well. It's funny that we've been doing this run of like early 2000s thing with Dumb and Dumber last time. Like this is one of those same ones where this was I think it was just a directed. I don't know if it was directed DVD or not, but I feel like it had legs on that at least. And I remember the cover really well. And it's always been in my mind like one of those early 2000s horrors that are no one like are reviled, but for some reason seem to have a legacy, whether good or bad, because I think it was just still early days of VHS and DVD, and so people were just renting more.
People watched it because it was something to watch on their DVD player.
And like a lot of that's the same thing that happens with Netflix now. People are like, oh, I liked Blair Witch. I guess I'll watch this Blair Witch too, and I'll rent it without thinking. Like, Netflix is predicated on this. Like, oh, I like true crime. I'll watch the next true crime that comes out. Like, it's just one of those movies that was had success because of that. Even though I don't know anyone who saw it and nobody liked it, but yeah.
All right, before we dig into the movies, let's get into the stats. The Blair Witch Project came out in 1999, had a budget of $60,000 and made $248 million at the worldwide box office.
Man, that's a return.
A return and a half. Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, what a title. Budget of $15 million, made $47 million at the worldwide box office. That came out in year 2000. And then Blair Witch 2016 movie, $5 million budget, made $45 million at international box office. Critical reception, 80 on Metacritic for the first movie, 15 for the second movie, and 47 for the third movie.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Look, we will talk about that. That's an interesting number.
All right, well, before we get to the second movie, let's get to the first movie, Blair Witch Project, 1999. 3 film students vanish after travelling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind.
They're real footage, too. I hear, to this day, that it was actually real.
Yeah, they even did a documentary, like a mockumentary, before this movie came out on Sci-Fi about like finding the footage and stuff. Like, just the marketing on this movie was genius.
It really is. Like, that's probably the legacy more than anything, and even of the movie, I think, in a lot of ways. Like, just the sort of what a small grassroots campaign can do, where just a little bit of ingenuity. And, like, I was reminded, looking into that, of Longlegs that just came out this year. And that is, like, in no way the same runaway phenomenon. But that had a really great marketing campaign run by Icon, and similar thing, like there were YouTubers making videos about the marketing, like, what is this movie? This is terrifying. There was all this incredible...
Showing the heart rate of the actress when she sees Nicolas Cage for the first time.
Exactly.
Really stuff.
And then you get like little snippets from the movie with no context, just like this, like almost like 30 seconds of something scary. And like, what the hell is this? And just getting this idea of like, oh, it's related to this movie. And even how they held on to Nicolas Cage's... The information that Nicolas Cage was in it, then the information of what he looked like, this slow bleed of facts, was like that movie ended up doing really well at the box office comparatively. And I was just a reminder, like, when you sort of, just when you're clever, when marketing is clever and thinks outside the box and is like, what can we do to really stand out?
Yeah.
It pays off both because it just makes people see a movie that could be good, but it also makes the experience better. Like, seeing this movie, even though it's fake, still really works because it's just like, it feels like it is taken from an alternate universe where this did happen. Even with the marketing, even though it's fake, it's like, it just feels so authentic that I don't know, even on this rewatch, I've seen this like 4 times or something, but I watched it at home, I turned the lights off, and I was like, it's really fucking scary.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think its biggest strength to this movie is even watching it now, knowing everything I know about it and that it's fake or whatever. Watching it, I cannot recall watching a movie with more believable performances where I was like, this does like I was surprised at how much it felt like this does feel like an old home video. Like,
Hmm.
Mm.
the way these people are acting or talking, and I was just like, this is done very, very well. Like, I would have been super convinced in the 90s that this
Yeah.
was real. It would have freaked the hell out of me because they just act normal and in a way that I feel like people now can't even do when they're on, like when they're acting. If they're people are trying to act normal, I don't know. They say shit that normal people don't say. But watching this, I was like, this does feel like a found footage thing from the 90s. This feels like one of my home videos, before it gets all creepy, obviously, and everything like that. But it feels like one of them, and it's so done, so well done.
Yeah, I think it's really genius. Like Conan touched on something before where, you watch older home videos and people perform for the camera, and you even get that here at the start, right? Like everybody they film kind of has, they do their little performance for the camera because they know they're being filmed, and you just see that gradually break away throughout the movie, and these people are just, it feels like they're filming a real experience, and it is really, really effective. And like there's that scene where like it's on the cover, she's filming, it's like right up her nose. It could not be less glamorous, but it's just like terrifying, like so well done, to the point where like a lot of these actors had trouble finding work after this because people thought it was like a real thing still. Like people were still unconvinced.
That's the thing. Like Heather Donahue's mother was receiving like condolence cards, be like, and like well wishes being like, we hope your daughter is found, even though it was, because again, it's the power of rumor. Like this, the story traveled that it was real, but the story that it was false didn't travel, and so people, even though it was disproven, people were still like, no, she's dead, and we hope your mother finds some peace.
Yeah, they use their real names too. Like,
I was
lots
just
of things play
googling
into
that
that.
because I was like, wait a minute, were they actually their real names? That's
Yeah.
crazy. Man,
It's
imagine
really
if they had just never acted. Like, obviously, I don't even know who they are. It's not like it's lucky that we're not watching this and it's like, oh, there's Robert Downey Jr. He's like, oh, Robbie, look at him go.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like these unknowns still to this day, really.
Yeah.
And when you watch
Yeah.
it, but imagine like if these people just disappeared, like afterwards, they were like, oh no, we've got enough money now, we're good, and we'll just disappear off the planet of the Earth, and nobody knows who we are.
Well, like that kind of happened, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
Like it's really sad. Like because the whole the whole economic story behind this is weird. You mentioned it before. The budget of this movie was tiny. They sold it for $1.1 million to Artisan, who then made 250 million.
Yeah.
So those earnings, none of that went to the team. Like the two directors, they had, there was no like, because these were like, it was an experimental film. They were like film students, I think, or like, graduates trying to make a concept basically. So there was no like contractual, residuals. There was no we'll earn points on this. So the directors
split up between everyone who worked on it.
That's the thing. So 1.1 million amongst, it's like they would have all made a decent payday, but it's like for the success that it had, it feels really gross because not only did they not get any pay, but then like their lives were kind of ruined. Heather Donahue she changed her name to Ray Hance, and like left film, became a medical marijuana, I don't know, dealer, specialist, something. The other guys, I think, had small tidbit acting career, but like you said, Grant, they couldn't get any roles. They were too well known, and like they were too stained by it, and it's really sad because for a movie that's so successful, the people who made it successful just did not benefit from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic story of like a Hollywood company just making a good investment and it paying off, and it's like that's not how this should go. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of
you like
watching
it,
it,
sorry.
yeah, watching it first time, I really enjoyed it. Like I felt captivated. It's a great length, like an hour and a half. It's like cruisy, and I felt like the whole time I was like, oh, we're already near the end. I was like, this is crazy. Like, but the only thing with me that sucked is I knew how it was going to end the whole time watching it, just because I'd seen over the years, every time there's like a viral, thread of, oh, what moment from cinema scared you? I always saw this screenshot of this dude looking at a wall.
Yeah.
I just kept seeing that screenshot of this dude looking at a wall. And then at the start of the movie, when they describe, they make one person face the wall and they kill the other one or whatever. Straight away, I was like, that's how this movie's going to end. I was like, this dude's going to be looking at a wall. The person filming is going to get not taken out. And so I was just waiting for that the whole time. I was like, okay, surely they're going to rock up upon a house sometime soon, and then that thing's going to happen. But still, watching it, even knowing that happened, her screaming and like how raw that feels of her, like it's just chaotic, running through the house, sees that. After it had run and the credits were rolling, I could just remember the way she was screaming, and then it just cut out and stopped. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that would have unsettled me a lot. If I was younger watching this at home or whatever, I would have freaked the hell out of me. But I really enjoyed this movie.
Sorry, this is the first time you've seen it, Luke?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize.
Never seen it. Yeah, never seen it. Definitely had never seen the other two. And yeah, but had just seen that one image of a dude looking at a wall for ages, and I was like, what's so scary about this? Everyone keeps talking about this scene traumatized me as a child. Like, it's always in them threads. And I was like, okay, cool. And I see why now, because it would have.
Yeah.
It really would have.
It surprised me, like, how little happens kind of in this movie. Like, you don't even see a shadow of a monster ever. Like, you don't see a glimpse of one. There's no blurry moments. In my memory, there is. Like, my memory of this movie has that footstep of the witch at the end, and has, I have that mythos in my memory, I guess, and not actually what happens. But I was just surprised, like, and apparently, like, they even filmed a scene with a guy in a white sheet, and the actors just didn't turn the camera in that direction correctly. And, like, this is what we ended up with, and it's better for it, I think.
But it works.
It's an incredible, like, convergence of those moments, where, because there's that scene where they're running through the woods and Heather screams, she's like, what the hell is that? And the camera jerks over to look, but you don't see anything.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what that was. They traumatized the actors on the set of this. Like, they truly they went through, shook tents, didn't tell them what was happening. And so the sound guy was dressed in a sheet, was running past. So they had no idea. So they're scared because something's attacking their tent. They run out. They see what looks like a ghost in the distance. But the camera guy just didn't film it. And it's like, but it's better for it. It's it just turned out so well. I think this movie is like so minimalist, because I have the same idea in my mind. I'm like, a lot happens. There's like big conversations and tensions and conflict, and like, like an incredible. I guess in my mind, I'm like, things have to happen because there's just this building of dread, and there is a building of dread, but nothing happens. It's so effectively done.
Yeah.
Like, it is just them not even talking about topics. This isn't like Tarantino talking about cheeseburgers. They're just being like, where are we going? I don't know. I've got to go to work tomorrow. I want to eat I want to eat my mum's mashed potatoes. Like, that's all they talk about. Yeah. But it's so fucking tense because you can see them getting more snippy. You can just you're lost with them. The sound design in this movie is so good. Like, every footstep crunching is like, it becomes really visceral, but also quiet enough that when something's louder, you just get jarred out of it. Like, and it never falls into the trap of being like, let's show something crazy or let's jump scare you. Like, there's not really any jump scares, I don't think. It's literally just like, because they come out of the tent and you just see stick men, and it's like, oh, that's really creepy, but it's not like slam cut to a stick man. It's just it is dread. It's just this slow building of unease.
Yeah. And it's just dead. That's it.
And that's it. Like, even at the end, right? Like, that jump scare, it's not a jump scare. She comes down and you slowly see what's happening, and it all starts to click into place, and then the camera drops.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you can't catch your breath because it's like so good. So good.
Yeah, minimalist is a good description for this movie, I think.
Yeah.
Is that really all we have to say about this movie?
I could go all day.
I mean, that's the thing with this type of movie. It is, because obviously you can't really go into plot points, because it's like three people walk out with cameras, haunting shit happens, and they die at the end, and they're filming it throughout. But so, Griner, how many times have you seen this? You watched this when you were younger, you said?
I must have watched it when I was like 13, 14, I think, like early high school. And then, I've seen it a few times since then. Yeah. Like, I definitely didn't find it as scary, this rewatch. Like, I wasn't, I was kind of dreading it a little bit because I remember how scared I was of it when I was younger. I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this movie. But, like, obviously, but it's still really good at building dread and stuff. I just, like, my memory of it is scarier than what it actually was, which I think is actually a good, it's lots of good horror movies do that to you. I think the ones that sit with you for a while, and yeah, you have I have that witch stepping through the scene at the end and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's how horror is. Like that's how good horror. Like I say, that's what good horror is. It's
Mm.
in the moment you experience it, but it lingers with you. It stays with you, and like then the iconography of this movie is really good. Like
Yep.
the stick men, even just like the color palette of the woods, because it's just all grey and like it's kind of monochrome, but I don't know, because same deal. Like whenever I imagine the woods, I imagine this version of the woods where it's like it's a sort of a winter's day,
Mm.
but it's shot through I don't know, like a Super 8 or whatever sort of crappy camera they have.
Yep.
It's pixely and it's grainy, and everything just feels sapped of life. And it's like, is that because there's a witch here? I don't know. Like, but yeah, just the stick figures and like I say, the head with the beanie and like the camera right up in her face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just all these visions are scarred into like not just my brain, but pop culture's brain, right? Like I can't think of anything probably more memed before memes were a thing than this movie.
The parodies of having the camera right up your nose and crying and making
That's the thing. What I think is really effective about this is it feels like they've gone into a weird like dimension where they're just lost, like a Bermuda's Triangle almost. That's what this forest feels like. You don't hear birds going off. I feel like you don't see any animals or anything like that. It feels just like we are three people walking in an endless woodland area, and we are stuck here forever. Can walk for 100 kilometers and we'll end up back in this spot. It feels like a nightmare scenario. And the iconography is classic, obviously, like the pentagrams and the stick figure people. It's
so
makes me a bit
creepy.
worried about these things. They just rocked up outside after I finished the movie. I thought they looked cool, but there's three of them too. Like, for us three, I don't know. I won't break any of them.
There's even some. I remember, like the first time I caught this was this rewatch, but at the start they were interviewing like the townspeople, and that's all fine. But there's one where it's like a mother and a child, and as soon as she starts talking about like the woods or the witch, the kid like freaks out and starts hitting her on the face and stuff, and it's just it's like really effective. Like it's very subtle. I just think the kid's being a little shit, but he's just scared of what she's talking about, and it just works so well.
And you can't plan that. I feel like that felt like what a perfect happenstance that the kid is trying to shut the mum up talking about this specific thing when the baby was probably just being shit like, "Mum, stop doing this. Like, what are you doing? Stop filming this thing for these people." But it works perfectly because it feels so real.
Yeah, because there's also the old lady they interview. And I can't remember what it's like, because there's one theory is that that's the witch, and that's why she's got like at the front of her house, she's got kind of like this almost barrier set up of like weird little relics and stuff. It's not like witchcraft stuff, but it's like just like a crazy sort of middle America house. And like, but she talks very strangely to them, and she's clearly like a bit weird. And I think they go and see her because she's like the local crazy lady.
Yeah.
And there is and you're watching it, and you just have that sense of like this feels real enough of like this is a weird person, but it's like something just feels a little bit worse. Something feels a little bit more off with it. It's like, is this the witch? Has she seen the witch? I don't know. I don't know if they're in on this. I don't know if like this whole town is is this going to go that direction of the whole town's part of it? They're going to kill these kids because everyone they interview is a bit strange and a bit odd, and like it just puts you on edge from sort of the beginning. It's that classic like out of towners coming to a small town and like you don't belong here sort of thing. And,
I'd be out of there. I'd nope right out of there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd wait until I found one of your guys' teeth and hair and like a piece of your shirt.
So that's what you found. I wasn't sure. I thought it might have been teeth and hair.
I think
it's never super clear, right? Like that's that's part of it. But
yeah, I think it's something fleshy and hair. I think it's meant to be like his tongue as well, and that's why the witch can emulate his voice.
See, reading theories and shit in the early days of the internet would have been really cool with this.
It's so dope, right?
Like, it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Take me back.
That whole like that scene where it like then ups the tension, where it's just her and Mike, and you can just hear Josh like screaming every now and then is again just incredible idea of like you never have to see anything. You see one bit of gore where it's that she picks up something bloody, but you don't know what.
Hmm.
and then you hear Josh screaming every now and then. It's
Yep.
just like that's terrifying, because not only does it just he's a pretty good screamer, but you're just like, I can't figure out what's going on. Like, is this him? Is is the witch? You just don't know, and your mind runs through these theories of like, what's happening? What could it be?
Yep.
And like I said before, Griner, it's all about the memory of it. That's the fear, is like the fear of the unknown. It's trite to say now, but that is what works, is when you don't show much and you just hint at it, and I don't know. And this is one of the best examples. If honestly, it could be the best example of that in a horror film. Like, of just showing almost nothing.
Yep.
But just making you think and using your mind to fill in all the gaps. Like,
You make it scarier yourself.
Yes.
yeah, like that's totally right.
And even like the cheap cameras play into that too, like the static and the black and white, like it all just comes together really well to be scarier than what the sum of its parts, I guess. Yeah.
It's got that analog horror feeling.
All right, shall we move on?
Yes.
We go down in quality to Blair Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. I'm going to get that name right every time. A group of tourists arrives in Burkittsville, Maryland, after seeing the Blair Witch Project to explore the mythology and phenomenon, only to come face to face with their own neurosis and possibly the witch herself.
Hell yeah, early 2000s horror, baby.
Oh man.
So it's a quick tidbit. For October, I've been watching horror films like almost every night. And I've watched a couple of, I did this last year as well, and I watched a couple of early 2000s, and I watched Wrong Turn this year, which is another early 2000s. And it's just the coolest period of horror history. It was so low budget. There was so much stuff that was poorly evaluated, but I think has some legs. And this movie is such an interesting little like specimen.
Is that DVD to blame for that? The boom of DVD in the early 2000s?
I mean, that's why that genre exists. Like, it was part of that. Just the market was flooded with horror DVDs because they were good renters.
Yeah.
You know, like they were Pulp Fiction basically, and you could make them super cheap, and yeah, they were just really cool. Like, I don't know, and this movie just reminded me so much of that. Like, even though it's 2000s, it feels so 90s in every way, to a fault. There are just some of the dialogue, some of the act performances are atrocious in this movie.
Yep.
But there's just such a charm to it. I don't know.
Man, no, this movie is the complete opposite of the first one in every sense of the way. And we talked about before starting this podcast, I feel like we've been on a run. Now, the last two podcasts, I've said, no, I think this is the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. And now it's the third time I'm saying it, because this movie... I don't know what you're on about, Conan. There's nothing redeemable in this film.
Oh, step off.
Now, here's the thing. Obviously, I saw the score before going into it, and I knew I was in for a rough night. Like, it's got 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was like, okay, oh, here we go. Strap in. But last time, Dumb and Dumber, the second one, also had a bad score.
Yeah.
You know what? And that was not bad. So I went into it, and honestly, the first, 5-6 minutes, I was like, kind of here for this. I kind of like what they're doing when they're interviewing the guy and interviewing people about the reception to the movie and all this. And it's crazy to me that well, not really after watching it, but this took 8 months to come out after the first one. Like, they jumped on this straight away. Like, okay, we need to pump out another one straight away because we're making off it. Which, and it's interesting. The first 5 minutes, as they're just going through basically the reception of the first one and interviewing these people, I was like, this is kind of cool if this is how they go about it. And then it changes. And it's not like that again for the rest of the film. And it just kept being points where I'm just like, what am I watching? Like, I don't like this. It feels like an acid trip movie. It just feels like
Totally does.
I'm just watching people trip, and I feel like I'm tripping watching this movie because it's just weird. But it just feels like it's just like a drug trip movie instead of a horror. It doesn't feel like horror to me, ever.
I mean, it's not scary at all. Like,
and the acting is just it's complete opposite of the first one, where I was like, oh, these are real people. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, these people are caricatures of stupid people. But yeah.
Like, where the first movie was like trailblazer ahead of its time, this is like a movie that is definitely
of its time.
Like, it is made deeply in the tradition of 90s like schlocky low budget stuff. So I totally agree with you there. Grano, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I like looking it up. I see a lot of people like defending it in recent times, which is funny. And I think lots of movies have that now where, oh no, I like, and I think a lot of it's nostalgia. Like people, it hit them at the right time, or it was their first of, or whatever. But yeah, I don't think there's much defending this movie. Like, you look into the trivia, and apparently there was lots of reshoots by the production company because they weren't happy with it. And it's an interesting idea to be like, because I think the original idea was that this movie was set in our world, and Blair Witch was a movie, not a real thing that happened, and that the horror in this one comes from the psychosis of of their own neurosis from the anyway. But it's like it never hits that mark very well, and with the changes made to it, obviously is even more ambiguous. Yeah, like I think it's an interesting idea, especially coming from like how do you back this movie up, I guess. Like back up the Blair Witch Project, something that was so unique and like trailblazing. Like, can you come out with just a second found footage movie a year later? I don't know that works either.
There's potential there, and I feel like the start of this movie is on the right track of potential of people being a fan of that first one and speculating if it's real or if it wasn't, and then going out to find out themselves, and it like something different, but something happening to them as well.
Yeah, I had sorry, continue.
No. Like that's all. But it squanders it, and there could have been potential where it could have been a really good 1-2 punch. But yeah, in 8 months' time, you're not going to do it.
No, I had a similar idea, like a mockumentary about the found footage movie, right? Like pretending to film real people and being like, this is the impact of their lives. But like this movie is interesting, right? Because you're right that it has had a critical reevaluation in a way, as a lot of these movies do, especially after the third one came out. People were like, maybe this much hated other sequel isn't as bad because the other sequel doesn't have a huge fan base. But like it's directed by this guy Joe Berlinger, who was a really accomplished documentarian. He made Paradise Lost, which is like probably the first of the true crime documentaries that as in we don't get a serial, we don't get the Jinx if we don't have Paradise Lost, sort of thing. So he kind of like is the grandfather of the true crime phenomenon in that way. And this is his first feature movie, so he's trying his hand at that. And what he wanted was, like you say, Grant, is this commentary on mass hysteria and this psychosis of people who are obsessed with movies. Basically, he saw that podcasters one day would ruin the world, and he's like, "This is how they will ruin the world, by looking too deep." But in true 90s 2000s fashion, the production companies butchered it. Like they added it, they cut out all the social commentary and added in these weird choices, like different songs. The police inspection flash forwards, so that they're arrested for something. Like that was never meant to be there, but they were like, we need to have someone to blame. It. The reason why this movie feels like a mess is because it was a mess being made. Yeah, it's like two separate movies mashed together by a company that wanted to do. And I'm a defender of movies that are like, I can see the idea in. Alien 3 underrated because I can see a vision there. And this is a similar thing. This movie is not good by any means, but there is such an interesting idea there that like I want to see that idea of like an exploration of what happens when everyone gets obsessed with something. And like you look into how he wrote this and the original script, it's like based off this like sociological textbook of like six characters in search of an author. Like there is a lot of ideas and research put into this. It is clearly not just a cash grab project. There's all these secrets and clues, but it just gets completely fucked up in the post-production. Like, which is a real shame. And I don't know, watching it, even though I was like, this movie is bad, it's definitely bad. I'm like, there's such a cool idea here that I kept seeing, and I kept being like, I just kind of am attracted to that.
So, had either of you seen this before?
No. I thought I might have. Like, I thought I may had. Like, I thought watching it might be like watching Dumb and Dumber the other week and being like, oh man, I watched this movie all the time as a kid. But I didn't get any of that here. I thought I maybe had seen it, but I definitely hadn't. I
can imagine this would have been a banger at sleepovers, right?
Yeah.
Like 2002 sleepovers, like let's crank out Book of Shadows.
No, I don't
laugh.
I watched so many bad movies when I was a teenager. Like the amount of time I spent in that video store getting 7 weeklies for $7 or whatever it was, and half of them were garbage movies, but I watched them because what else did you do when you were a teenager in a small town?
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough. Last fortnight, I admitted to watching Dumb and Dumber over and over and over again with my mates on sleepovers, so I guess I'm a bit of a hypocrite. But yeah, like, that's the thing, doing something similar to the first one where, and I feel like, you can see his strength as a documentary maker at the start of it when it is done like a documentary and it's filming these people, interviewing them. And I like that the most, where almost doing a whole second film like a documentary would have been an interesting way to go about it. That like someone's just filming a documentary on the reception to it and it keeps getting worse and worse and all this sort of stuff. It just, it feels odd. And I don't like the whole thing. Like I roll my eyes at the start of the movie when it's like, oh, what you're about to see is people reenacting events that might have happened. And then I was like, okay, wait a minute. So are we watching actors acting these things, or are we watching what actually happened? I was like, this is stupid. Now I'm confused. And I don't know if it's because I'm stupid or this whole thing is stupid, but it just makes people feel like actors even more than, which obviously their performances do that anyway. But yeah,
those reenactments aren't like something to aspire to most of the time anyway, right? Like they're very poorly done and they're cheap as possible. Like I don't know.
Start your movie like that.
It's a weird thing to start your movie like, What did you guys think of like the whole? It's almost the Hangover, right? Trying to figure out what happened the night before, where they're going back through the tapes, and I didn't mind some of that, but it really loses it. Like there's moments where on tape it shows them hiding the videotapes that they are on, like. Lots of things like that just don't make any sense. And then the whole it's unlocked by going to this certain time stamp and running it backwards makes zero sense. Like just very bizarre.
It's kind of that idea of like, in the same way the internet was like this alien relic in the first one that the audience was interested in. I guess at the time people were still a bit like, tapes, how do they work, right? And so when you're like, you can rewind tapes and do all this cool shit, your average audience goer was like, whoa, maybe if it's like that urban myth of like you rewind one of the Beatles records and you can hear satanic rituals on there and stuff. Like, I mean, that's a tale as old as time.
That's your pitch for this movie. That's what they do in this. What it should do in the second one is talk about what Griner talked about with Easter eggs of people saying, if you rewind, you can see the witch in this frame. Have these people do that, be like, talk about, I heard you if you watch the first movie and do this, and they do that, and that's what then brings the witch into their world or whatever. Like they see something different where it's the scene changes from the first movie. All of a sudden now they're staring straight at the camera and it's like, okay, what the hell have I just witnessed? So then it makes it fun for people to be like, oh my god, do I go back and watch the first movie? Like I feel like you could have had fun with this and played on it way more than what they did.
And that is still like that is the half the movie really, is that where they're like, like the tourists going out to the campsite, and it's like, why on earth would you go out to this? Like, they're coming out to just the woods in Maryland from all over the world to see like a trail. Like, there's nothing to see, and it's like that idea of obsession. And I don't know. So, as for a tidbit, like the original opening credits, the song he wanted was "Witchcraft" by I think it's Frank Sinatra, which is like a 30s crooning swingers song. Like, it's really, and there's a clear comedy to that. There's a humor to that idea of like, it's a Blair Witch movie with this crooning song on there. But the company wanted them to have Marilyn Manson. And like, as soon as you watch it with that, it's like a complete different feel. It's like, I'm in for a crazy ride. Yep. And so you can tell, I think he wanted to have more fun with it. Like, the original vision was to have a bit more of like, take the piss out of people who are like, if you stop here and go there, you'll see the witch. And that obsession, I think, is his point of focus. It just, it's completely lost. And like, I think it's a cool idea of like going half the movie being just going through tapes and trying to figure out what's happening, and kind of this obsession unraveling in one site is kind of interesting. I don't know. The thing that really didn't work for me the most is just like the horror scares added in, like when they see ghosts on the bridge, and it's like this little ghost of a girl walking backwards, and she's like sort of jiving out of there. It's the strangest thing. It's not scary. It's just it's really weird, and I don't know why the hell that's put in there. Like, I don't know.
The other thing for me was like anytime they interact with anyone else in the town, it feels like the 1920s or something. Like, she's at the shops and it's this old like cash register that's mechanical, and Yeah, I don't know. Like, not that never went anywhere. It never meant anything, but it was just really like, oh, it's just a really backwards old town, I guess. I don't know.
All right, so here's what's interesting, right? So there is like dozens of secrets. So in the same way, the first one, there was like a whole viral marketing with this one, in that there was a website that you could visit, and there were clues put in this movie. That if you could find all the clues, figure them out, and write it in, your name would get rewarded, put on a list basically as your reward. So there was like a scavenger hunt in this movie, and one of the secrets is that in that old store, the mechanic under the drinks fridge is Rustin Parr, the guy who killed the kids that they mentioned in the first one, because they released a mockumentary, like fake documentary of Rustin Parr's court trial, and it's the same actor. So like there is this weird like obsessive mythology to this movie if you want to go down that path. Where it makes sense if you're participating in all the extracurricular stuff. But you're right, if you don't do that, and if you're not obsessed with this movie, which is kind of like... But I guess if you saw this movie, though, and when it came out, you were probably obsessed with Blair Witch, so maybe you were into all that. It might have been a better experience, I don't know. It is hard to come at it now, 24 years later. Like, why am I supposed to know who that guy is? Like, yeah, you're right. It's like, what does any of this shit mean?
Yep.
But there is an idea there. It's just lost in... Again, I don't know. It's probably on the Wayback Machine somewhere.
All right. Is there anything else we want to say about Blair Witch 2? Terrible title. What is the Book of Shadows?
There is no Book of Shadows. What the hell?
Yeah.
I was promised a Book of Shadows.
Yeah.
I expect the character to say the name of the movie in every movie, and we didn't get that.
It's bullshit.
Oh, look, the Book of Shadows.
Yeah, that should be the other problem is the sheriff's doing the weirdest, like, I don't know. It's like he's doing
the sheriff.
He's doing like a black guy impression from the 70s or something. It's so strange. Like, I don't know what his voice is.
Apparently he was like a total add-in after the fact, kind of like.
It's bad. Yeah, it's a shame.
All right, Blair Witch 2016. After discovering a video showing what he believes to be his vanished sister Heather, James and a group of friends head to the forest believed to be inhabited by the Blair Witch. Is this a reboot? Counts as
sequel.
I would say it's a requel.
A requel, yes. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah, like I'd forgotten that this was actually connected to the original one. I thought it was like a reboot, and it was just like... But then, yeah, it starts and it's like he's looking for Heather. I'm like, oh no, it's literally a sequel, but it's it's framed as a, you know, here is the same movie redone for modern audiences. Which I don't know. What did you guys think of this? Like, I come back and forth.
Your
I think it's okay. Like, I think it was pretty scary. It was pretty good at doing jump scares, and I think, you know, the monster moments work pretty well here. Honestly, for a movie based on a movie that has none of those, and it's all kind of implied, this movie actually doesn't do a terrible job at modernizing that and giving you some CGI effects, like that moment where they break the stick figure and the girl just like snaps in half. Like, oh,
real good,
like, good moment. I think modern technology is not like doesn't lend itself as well to this style of found footage, especially the like first person cameras on their ears. I wasn't a fan of that. That really annoyed me. And I think something else that has left my brain. So no, the other thing is like the way it's cut together. They're like shooting B-roll and stuff, and like, you know, little moments in the sunshine and little bugs on the ground and stuff like that, and it made it feel less like a found footage film. Like they were trying to have the best of both worlds, where it's a found footage film, but we've also got B-roll and establishing shots and all these other things you get in a normally filmed movie.
Yeah,
and I don't know, wasn't as effective.
I went into this with low expectations. Obviously after driving off a cliff with the second one, I was like, oh man, in for a rough ride. But this surprised me because I kind of enjoy this movie. And it might have been just because I just finished watching the second one, and I was like, oh, all right, watch the third one now. And I was like, oh, this isn't too bad. But I feel like, because it does horror differently. You know, you can say the first one has more dread and more ominous, but I feel like this one's a scarier movie. Like I definitely felt more like, oh, I got jump scared, and whereas the first one didn't have jump scares. We discussed that, but I feel like this one also has an effective ending where like the last 10 minutes or so is pretty terrifying, and like
Yep.
it's the similar thing to the chick screaming in the first one where it finished and I was like, whew, man, like I had to take a moment. I was like, that was intense. Like that was pretty hectic how they did that, and I think it was a pretty effective ending considering how classic the original's ending is. And I also liked what they did with it, that it's like, her brother looking for her after all
Mm.
these years and watching a YouTube clip and like, oh yeah, if you pause it at the right angle, you see this thing. And going into kind of what I was just talking about, what they should have done with the second one. I like that. And yeah, it's a bit like the drone's completely pointless because it's like, oh yeah, we'll we'll
Yeah.
do like we can look somewhere, and then it's just a slow camera shot of it going up for a while. You don't see much, and then it crashes the next minute anyway,
Yeah.
and then it's just a very pointless plot point anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, her breaking in half when she breaks the stick figure is messed up. I was like, oh my god, that's insane. And going with the scares more, the friend disappears, the tree falls on him, gets carried away. It's just I don't know, it feels more tense. And I had this pegged as it was going to be a bad film, and I honestly don't understand the hate it gets. I feel like if this was just on a film on its own, or I don't know, but I feel like it deserves better than 30 something percent on Rotten Tomatoes. So I feel
It's
like
47 on Metacritic, so it's not.
yeah, like it's a decent horror film. I
Mm.
feel.
Yeah, I think with any beloved property or franchise, like sequels are judged more harshly.
Mm.
Since you get a Book of Shadows and it's just judged very harshly, which I don't think is
Yeah.
fair. And similarly with this, I think because this movie, I think it's okay. Like I think it does a good job of adapting, sort of recreating the first one, but changing it enough to make it feel a bit different. But I think a lot of people just don't like that. I think a lot of people because it. I can see why you would look at this and say this is just a shittier version of the first one that is like removed all the quote unquote high concept scares and replaced them with jump scares and monsters. Like, in a lot of ways, this does all the things that horror snobs don't like. It's like, oh, you see the CGI monster. You have, and so I can see why there's be some frustration there because you've taken a really simple idea and like, I don't know, ruined it in that sense. But I think it works. Like it's like you say, this movie is really the first one is quiet and unsettling. This one is like bombarding and disorienting. Like the last half an hour is just does not let up.
No,
it is just like going through the house and her in the tunnel.
The tunnel,
it's like
the tunnel's intense, man. Like I struggled to breathe watching that.
Yeah, very claustrophobic.
Like it's all that's really effective. She's like throwing the camera and it looks at you and you're like, fuck, what's going to be there?
Kept waiting for something to go.
I kept waiting for it to just end. Like she's just going to die suffocating in this tunnel. Like,
that would have been horrific. But it creeped me out so much because I kept expecting something to be like crawling through the tunnel straight at her, and I was like, oh
exactly.
God.
Like that's it, and so all that works really well. Where it's like, it's just this sensory overload, and you just feel like it's visceral. You feel it a lot more. And so the last half hour, I think, is really, really good. The problem is like the first hour is, in my mind, pretty bad. Like all the characters are really dumb. Like when Peter goes to get firewood and gets caught by the witch, it's like a kilometer away from the camp. I'm like, dude, just get
wood everywhere.
Exactly. Why are you out there getting sticks? Like this is just stupid. But like that doesn't work. Just a lot of I don't know. All the like they wake up and Lane and his girlfriend have set it up, and so they sort of just march away into the woods, and it's like these guys are meant to be like obsessives, and they just like, okay, we'll walk blindly into the woods, like very like bad move. If you're that obsessed with this idea and these woods in this movie, you wouldn't be just walking blindly through the forest. But so like the whole first hour of setup, I find is really pretty bad. It feels like a worse version of the first one.
Yeah.
But it is when it changes, it really comes into its own, and it becomes like a faithful sequel in my mind.
Even though it is a very different tone. Like you're right, it's very bombarding. Like that, and that last. But it's disorienting too. I guess like that, a bit like Blair Witch Project. Like just running through that house, through all the doors, but yeah.
And so it's like 5 stories or something.
I know this house is enormous somehow.
It's just, And everywhere you turn, there's like someone's foot, or it's like you see someone drone through, and it's just like you have no idea where you are or what's going on, and it's pretty effective.
Kind of like how the house just kind of like, the forest kind of wears them down to the point, and then the house appears out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, let's go. Like, they almost have no choice but to go in, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, you go seek shelter. It's a cool mythology idea.
Yeah.
I think you're right about what you said as well with like the cameras in this one. Like that's the other thing I really didn't like about the whole first part is like the digital camera and like the quick jumping back and forth between different point of views, but also how every single cut is like everyone wakes up and there's like a really loud, like that crackle and like static and slam, and it's I don't know what you call it, but it's like the sound level spike.
Yeah.
And so whenever it cuts to a new day, it's like this massive sound spike, and it's just meant to jump scare you. And there's like I don't know, that and all like the pixels breaking when it needs to be scary. That's just not as effective as like grainy camera footage.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, as you said, Luke, as well, the drone's really kind of dumb. It's like they bring a drone and it just crashes straight away.
Yeah.
It doesn't even see over the tree level. I don't know.
No, you just see trees.
It really achieves absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's obviously meant to just get someone in the tree for a clever kill.
So.
But it's, What did you guys think of the time loop? Because that's the other. This movie is like literally just a time paradox.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean it is it? I don't know. Like it's a time and location loop because they also walk east for a day or whatever it is, and then end up back where they began, just like in the first one.
Yeah, it is. But I guess the movie starts with them finding the footage of them going into.
Oh yeah, that's right. It is
because the footage they see is actually her running through the house at the end. So it's like,
yeah,
that's weird. I don't know. I don't understand.
Time paradox.
Because
I'm too dumb for that.
Because the other one is Lane. He's like, they see Lane and he's like, I've been gone for a week. And they're like,
Yes.
No, we left you this morning. So like time is clearly working differently there, but time seems to be a big deal in this movie, which I'd forgotten about as well.
Yeah,
but it doesn't do a lot with that though. Like it's kind of, I don't mind the whole like, oh, we saw you this morning. No, I've been gone for a week. That's all right. But that whole them seeing her in that camera footage at the start, strange.
I kept expecting them to run in and see the guy from the original movie facing the wall.
Yeah,
still facing the wall.
And I was going to be like, oh, it's a weird thing where, it's looping back around or whatever. But the little handprints and everything they do in the house, like I think is really creepy. Where it's, and I think that is where the first person view does work a lot. In that house, in that final 30 seconds or so, where he's running through and opening doors and closing doors and lights flickering off and stuff like that. I don't mind that view and everything.
But I don't see how that's any different to having a handheld camera, same as we had in the first movie.
Man, that dude would throw that camera and run.
Maybe. I guess they're not as committed to filming, maybe.
Yeah. Heather was invested. She was taking that camera everywhere she went.
Yeah, she was.
The thing that also makes no sense, though, is like there are angles that are used that aren't anyone's cameras. Like there are angles that are close point of view, but it's not. It's just from somewhere. It's not actually from a camera source.
Yeah,
and like it happens towards the end mostly, but it's like she'll throw her camera away, and then it'll cut to her point of view. It's like she doesn't have a camera though.
No, that's the one in her ear. Those little earpieces are supposed to be first person.
Are they all cameras?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's supposed to be. That's what annoyed me because I think that's just too. There's too many cameras. Like it allows them to just film it almost like a normal movie. They don't have to work within the confines of being found footage anymore.
Yeah, okay. I thought, maybe there was more, or maybe I'm just getting confused. But I find that really brought me out of it. Like, why is this? Why am I seeing this angle? This doesn't feel.
No,
right.
I agree. It doesn't feel right.
And the other part is the acting as well. Like because this had a lot more of like characters kind of conversing about, their trauma. And like, oh, I've lost my sister. I'm so sad. I don't know. That like it makes it feel like a modern horror movie. It doesn't have the same just like let's talk absolute shit and we're like real people. It feels very much like scripted, structured characters who are like, even from the get go, Peter's just like ridiculing Wayne, and I'm like, this is I don't know. People don't act that way,
Yeah. Yeah. Like Lane's the weirdo. We need to make a quip about him, sort of thing. But yeah, I think the acting's fine in it. Like especially after the second one, I thought the acting's pretty good throughout. But yeah, it doesn't feel real like the first one does.
No.
No.
Like you could convince me now that the first one is real. You know what I mean? Like that
I've got
they
news for you.
weren't actors. No, don't tell me. Don't tell me. It'd freak me out. Yeah, too much.
Have a look. Heather Donahue doesn't exist anymore
Huh?
because she died.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the monster?
Creepy.
Yeah, I agree. I think they showed it a decent amount without being too much and too clear and too obvious.
Like now, I can't picture it in my head. I just know it's a tall, lanky, creepy
Yeah.
thing. It just like I keep picturing, the spoilers, the alien from Alien Romulus. I'm like, oh, big creepy thing, and they always creep me out. Big creepy things coming down hallways. There's a scene in It Follows of a tall dude walking through a doorway, and it's the only thing that haunted me from that movie. Like, yeah, I think, and they show it just enough. Like it works, I think. So
I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think because that was the other major criticism of like people being like, "Oh, the monster's just this tall dude," but I think it's like because you see it in like 3 parts and you just see its limbs. Really, it's pretty creepy. Like I can still remember it pretty well. Like just being this something scary to look at. And that stuck with me all these years. That's cool. That's effective.
definitely.
All right. Is that it? Anything else to say about Blair Witch Project?
Has anyone played the Blair Witch game?
Yeah, no, I don't know if I would. I mean, I'm curious too, but I don't know how it would work. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it would be good or not. So there's a funny part in the third movie where after he's running through their house he's following ghosts and shit, and he sees something scary. He's like, "Oh fuck this," and then just goes to leave. I don't know. That made me laugh a lot. I'm like, but I'm just like, it's taking you this long. He's like running through this house, and then finally he's like, "Oh no, I'm getting out of here." Oh, dude.
I think I've made a mistake. Now I'll leave.
Yeah, I'm on the 6th floor of his house, and I'm gonna try to get out.
But just to touch on again, I know we spoke about it. It's something I'd forgotten about, but yeah, the scene of her in the tunnel, I think, is all time. I think that was actually really good and really tense, and it was terrifying. Like I hate small spaces and claustrophobia. It was just right type of horror for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand where that tunnel's going. Like, I know they talk about there being like a series of tunnels at the start or whatever, but it feels like she's climbing down, but she's still now, in the house somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, again, time and space doesn't make any sense in that forest, but it felt like she should have ejected somewhere else.
Yeah. I don't know. They say it's part of the Underground Railroad, but I'm like, how are you smuggling anyone through there? Like,
yeah.
Not comfortably.
All right. I feel like this is a really easy one to rank. Is it 1, 3, 2?
1, 3, 2.
Any other order that makes any sense?
Whoa! Calm down. No, it would be, but damn it if I don't want to see the director's cut of Book of Shadows. There isn't one, but
release the Snyder cut.
The director did a commentary apparently where he's pretty scathing about the changes. So
exactly. And I think
interesting.
I think he has said what his version would look like what there should be, how to read, what song choices. So I think he knows what it would look like. There's not actually one committed to film, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I think 1 through 2.
And obviously, the original people that sold the rights, when you said they had nothing to do with this one, the second one.
No, yes, so completely gone. So they weren't included, weren't involved, no connection. Because they literally sold the movie and the rights.
Should have rewarded them with a job on producing or something. Like producing's really important. If you're a producer on something, you're a big deal.
It feels pretty gross. Yeah, it's like you guys should have at least brought them on as EPs and it's been like, hey, can we get your insight if nothing else? What's
your thoughts? Is this where Marilyn Manson should play, or should that come in later?
Yeah, exactly. I do want to ask because Lionsgate now has the rights to this movie and they're rebooting it. Or this franchise, rather. So, what do you guys want from another one? What do you expect?
Influencers, live streaming out there.
Like
you know
Bristers.
it's going to go that way, right? Like how
100%.
else do they do? I don't know how you do this movie in 2024. To me,
Logan Paul into the suicide.
I was about
woods.
to say, get Logan Paul.
There it is.
Yeah, Mr. Beast. It's all it ends up being a Mr. Beast challenge. He's trying to freak them all out.
To me, you take it back and make it analog again. Like seriously, set it in 1994 or whatever. I don't care.
They just try to
But the problem is we've
Redo it,
had that.
basically.
I don't know if it's worth. Yeah,
Can't top that. So do
maybe just
something
stop making Blair Witch movies.
Well, like this genre, like but the found footage horror genre, you touched at the beginning. This is the first one wasn't the first one, but it was really like the one that sort of immortalized it as a genre.
Yep.
And then in 2008, Paranormal Activity comes along and revitalizes it again.
Yep.
And it's, it works in that separate way where it's like they're making a home documentary, but there's a lot of nanny cam footage and stuff. So, like, the genre is probably ripe for not a reinvention, but, like a revitalization again. So, is it just TikToks and drone shots? Like, or is there another way to make it?
They did Unfriended, where it was like Zoom calls and
webcams
and video chats and webcams. It would have to be influencer and TikTok and streaming. And
I think you're probably right.
It would be some streamer, and for some reason, nobody can find them out there because they're in the middle of some paradox land. But because you can't have streamers without internet, like they can't be out there with no service. Because who the hell are they streaming for? They ain't streaming for free. Partner with Elon Musk. Yeah.
Because I guess the other question is like, do you turn this into a franchise that has nothing to do with found footage, like Book of Shadows? Do you just turn into like movies?
No, I don't think you can. I don't think you
I
do.
think it works.
I reckon what are these movies without the found footage? What is the Blair Witch? It's this lanky monster, I guess, according to the third movie. But
well, actually, technically, that's not the witch. That's one of the people she killed.
True.
Yeah, get it right. Get your mythology right, bro. Yeah, I think like a mockumentary is a good idea. Kind of like what we were talking about with what 2 could have been. Instead of found footage, do it as like mockumentary. But I don't know. But I'm curious.
Style of The Office. If someone doesn't jim the camera in this movie, I'm out.
So it's just The Office, but Michael Scott is the Blair Witch,
basically.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get your own horror version of The Office when The Office Australia
comes out.
That'll be scary enough.
Hey, stop! We might have people involved in that listening. All right.
Could it have been good?
Season 2. Bring us on for season 2. Great.
All right, that's it for the Blair Witch Project. We're continuing on with October horror movies. Is it called the X Trilogy? Is that how it's?
Maxine?
Yeah, I thought it's Ty West's X Trilogy.
So it's Pearl, X, and Maxine. That's right, isn't it?
X, Pearl, Maxine.
Cool. Pretty recent horror movies. I'm keen to watch them. I don't know anything about them. I haven't seen them. I haven't even heard anything about them except for knowing they exist from you, Conan. So
people are fans. People on Reddit put Pearl in their top 10 horror movies of the past decade.
People on Reddit know what they're talking about too. So
it was on the internet.
They'll have you throwing up.
No, screw that. We're doing Terrifier 1, 2, and 3 streaming.
One day we'll do Terrifier.
Next year.
One day it'll be available to us.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for joining us for The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. This podcast was brought to you by a couple of books written by C.V. Clarke, Taste of Iron and The God Grotesque.
You like horror?
You like horror?
In the woods.
You like a slow-burning horror without jump scares. They're the books for you.
Witches too. Witches. A lot of witches.
Fuck yeah, baby.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Rate us on iTunes, Spotify. It helps us out a lot, and we'll catch you next time.
Wicked good.